Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling, an immersive summary. The old Riddle House stood like a broken tooth against the night sky, its windows dark and lifeless, yet something stirred within its crumbling walls. Frank Bryce, the elderly caretaker whose weathered hands had tended these grounds for decades, climbed the creaking stairs with his heart hammering against his ribs. The dim light flickering from the upper room drew him forward like a moth to flame, though every instinct screamed for him to flee. What he discovered in that dusty chamber would be his last sight. Two figures huddled in conspiracy, one skeletal and serpentine, the other cowering and rat-like, their voices weaving plans of murder and resurrection. The flash of green light that ended Frank's life sent ripples across the magical world, though none yet understood the significance of what had begun. Miles away, Harry Potter jolted awake in his cramped bedroom on Privet Drive, his lightning bolt scar searing with pain so intense it felt as though his skull might split. The vision of the old man's death played behind his eyelids like a terrible film, leaving him gasping and disoriented in the suffocating darkness of the Dursleys' house. Summer stretched endlessly before him, each day a monotonous parade of chores and silent meals, while his aunt and uncle treated him like a particularly unwelcome piece of furniture. Yet hope flickered when Hermione's letter arrived, followed by an unexpected invitation that made his heart soar: the Quidditch World Cup with the Weasleys, a chance to escape the prison of Privet Drive. The morning of his departure brought chaos in the most wonderful way possible. The Dursleys' pristine living room erupted in a shower of soot and debris as the Floo network spectacularly failed to accommodate the Weasley twins' dramatic entrance. Fred and George tumbled through the fireplace in a tangle of limbs and laughter, their red hair dusted with ash, while Mr. Weasley's apologetic voice echoed from somewhere within the chimney. The Dursleys' horrified faces were worth every moment of the mayhem that followed. Uncle Vernon's purple complexion, Aunt Petunia's strangled gasps, and Dudley's panicked retreat behind the sofa as magical sparks flew through their meticulously ordered world. When Harry finally tumbled out of the burrow's fireplace, covered in soot but grinning broadly, he felt as though he could breathe again. The warmth of Mrs. Weasley's embrace, Ron's enthusiastic backslapping, and Hermione's delighted squeal of greeting washed away the lingering shadows of his nightmares. The burrow was full of happy noise as everyone got ready. The walls felt like they were waiting for the big game. Yet beneath the joy and reunion, Harry couldn't quite shake the memory of that searing pain or the feeling that something dark was stirring in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The morning air crackled with excitement as Harry joined the Weasley family for their extraordinary journey to the Quidditch World Cup. Their departure came before dawn, a magical adventure that began with an old boot lying innocuously in a misty field, a portkey that would transport them across the country in an instant. The sensation was unlike anything Harry had experienced, a violent tugging behind his navel that sent the world spinning in a kaleidoscope of colours before depositing them in a sprawling campsite already buzzing with international wizarding families. The campground was a wonderland of magical chaos, where tents defied the laws of physics and space itself seemed negotiable. Irish supporters painted their faces emerald green while Bulgarian fans waved their scarlet banners, creating a sea of competing colours that stretched to the horizon. Harry marvelled at the sight of wizards from every corner of the globe, some attempting to blend in with Muggle camping gear with hilariously imperfect results, others brazenly displaying their magical heritage with tents that resembled miniature palaces complete with gardens and fountains. The Weasleys pitched their modest canvas shelter next to a family whose accommodations included peacocks strutting across manicured lawns, while Mr. Weasley gleefully examined every Muggle contraption he could find, much to his children's embarrassment. As night fell, the stadium revealed itself in all its magnificent glory, a massive structure that seemed to have been carved from the very earth itself, rising like an ancient colosseum under the star-studded sky. 100,000 witches and wizards filled the stands, their excited chatter creating a thunderous hum that made Harry's chest vibrate with anticipation. The match itself was poetry in motion, a display of athletic prowess and magical skill that left spectators breathless. Ireland's chasers moved like dancers, their passes so fluid they seemed choreographed, while Bulgaria's Viktor Krum soared through the air with the grace of a hunting hawk, his Wronski feint sending gasps rippling through the crowd. The decisive moment came when Krum, bloodied but unbowed, caught the golden snitch in a move that spoke of both triumph and strategic sacrifice, securing personal glory while conceding the match to Ireland's superior teamwork. The stadium erupted in a cacophony of cheers and groans, Irish supporters leaping from their seats as green and gold fireworks painted the night sky, while Bulgarian fans sat in stunned silence, processing their bitter victory. Harry felt drunk on the spectacle, his heart still racing from the incredible display of Quidditch mastery he had witnessed. But the euphoria shattered like glass against stone when darkness fell over the campsite in the hours that followed. What began as celebration turned to terror as hooded figures emerged from the shadows, their faces hidden behind silver masks that gleamed with malevolent intent. Death Eaters moved through the camp like spectres of nightmare, their wands raised in cruel entertainment as they suspended helpless muggles in the air, twisting them like marionettes for their amusement. Panic swept through the tents like wildfire, families fled in all directions, children crying for their parents, the joyful chaos of the World Cup transformed into something horrific. Then came the moment that froze every wizard's blood. A skull made of sickly green light materialized in the sky, a serpent writhing from its mouth like a tongue of death. The dark mark was over them, like a bad thing coming. Harry's scar hurt, and he felt very scared. The magical world's greatest celebration had become the stage for its darkest fears to return, and as they fled into the night, Harry knew that his peaceful summer had come to an abrupt and ominous end. The familiar rhythm of returning to Hogwarts felt different this year, as if the very stones of the castle sensed the undercurrent of change flowing through its ancient corridors. Harry found himself swept back into the comforting chaos of the great hall, where floating candles cast their warm glow over tables laden with the first feast of term. Yet beneath the surface of normalcy, whispers circulated about the new defense against the dark arts teacher, a grizzled wizard whose reputation preceded him like thunder before lightning. Mad-Eye Moody limped into their first defense class with the bearing of a battle-scarred warrior, his magical eye spinning independently in its socket as it surveyed every corner of the room. The students sat transfixed as this legendary aura rolled up his sleeves and did what no teacher had dared before. He demonstrated the 3 unforgivable curses with unflinching directness. The classroom fell silent as death when he performed the killing curse on a spider, the tiny creature's life snuffed out with 2 simple words. Harry's scar prickled with uncomfortable familiarity as Moody explained that Harry was the only known survivor of this curse, his matter-of-fact delivery making the miracle of Harry's survival feel simultaneously more precious and more terrifying. The lesson left everyone shaken but undeniably educated about the darkest corners of magic they would soon need to understand. The castle's atmosphere shifted dramatically when October brought visitors from across the magical world. Beauxbatons Academy arrived in a powder-blue carriage the size of a house, pulled by magnificent winged horses whose hooves struck sparks from the ground. Their students emerged like graceful butterflies, led by the imposing Madame Maxime, whose presence commanded immediate respect. From the depths of the Black Lake rose Durmstrang's ship, a ghostly vessel that seemed to have sailed from the pages of maritime legend, bringing with it students who moved with military precision, and the famous Viktor Krum, still nursing his Quidditch injuries, but carrying himself with quiet dignity. The announcement of the Tri-Wizard tournament electrified the school like lightning striking water. Dumbledore's words painted pictures of ancient glory and deadly challenges, while the Goblet of Fire sat like a sentinel in the great hall, its blue flames dancing with hypnotic beauty. Age restrictions and warnings of mortal danger only heightened the anticipation as older students dreamed of eternal glory. Then came the moment that shattered all expectations. Harry's name erupted from the goblet's flames like an accusation, the parchment floating down through stunned silence that felt heavier than stone. The great hall exploded into chaos, voices rising in disbelief and anger, while Harry sat frozen in his seat, feeling as though the world had tilted off its axis. As suspicious glares and whispered accusations followed him from the hall, Harry realized that his 4th year at Hogwarts would be anything but ordinary, and that once again he had been thrust into circumstances far beyond his control or desire. The weight of unexpected fame crashed down upon Harry Potter like a suffocating blanket, transforming his world from familiar comfort into a minefield of whispered conversations and pointing fingers. Where once he had walked the corridors of Hogwarts with the easy confidence of belonging, he now found himself scrutinized by every pair of eyes, his every movement dissected by students who suddenly saw him as either a hero to worship or a fraud to despise. The most devastating blow came not from strangers, but from Ron Weasley, his closest friend whose face had hardened into a mask of bitter resentment. The jealousy that festered in Ron's heart created an invisible chasm between them, leaving Harry to navigate the treacherous waters of the Triwizard Tournament without his most trusted ally by his side. Rita Skeeter descended upon Harry like a vulture sensing carrion, her quick quotes quill dancing across parchment with malicious glee as she twisted his words into sensational headlines. The wand thing was her chance to act again. Harry felt bad, but she wrote a good story about it for the newspaper. Meanwhile, the tournament officials examined his wand with clinical precision, their faces betraying nothing of the deadly trials that awaited him. The ceremony felt like a funeral preparation, a final check of his tools before he marched toward an uncertain fate. In the Forbidden Shadows near the Forbidden Forest, Hagrid's massive form trembled with worry as he led Harry to witness the dragons, magnificent, terrifying beasts whose scales gleamed like polished armor in the moonlight. The Hungarian horntail reared its terrible head, breathing fire that could melt stone, and Harry's courage nearly deserted him entirely. Sirius Black's urgent warnings echoed in his mind, painting pictures of the very real danger that lurked ahead, while the weight of mortality pressed down upon his 14-year-old shoulders. When the first task arrived, Harry stood alone in the arena, his heart hammering against his ribs as the Hungarian horntail fixed him with eyes like molten gold. The crowd's roar faded to a distant hum as primal survival instincts took over. His firebolt responded to his desperate summons like a faithful steed, carrying him through aerial combat that defied death at every turn. Fire scorched the air inches from his face, claws scraped against stone where he had been moments before, but somehow, miraculously, he emerged victorious with the golden egg clutched in his trembling hands. In that moment of triumph, Ron's jealousy finally crumbled, replaced by genuine awe and the painful realization of what he had nearly lost, leading to a reconciliation that felt like coming home after a long, cold winter. The castle walls seemed to whisper with newfound secrets as autumn deepened into winter, carrying with it revelations that would reshape the very fabric of Hogwarts. In the warm glow of the kitchens, a most extraordinary sight greeted those who dared to venture below, house elves working not in chains of servitude, but with the dignity of wages and freedom. Dobby, his mismatched socks a vibrant declaration of independence, bustled about with infectious joy alongside Winky, whose own journey toward liberation remained fraught with uncertainty and shame. Their presence at Hogwarts represented more than employment. It was a quiet revolution unfolding beneath the grand staircases and ancient stones. As December's chill settled over the grounds, the castle transformed into a wonderland of anticipation for the Yule Ball. Students who had previously concerned themselves only with Quidditch scores and exam marks suddenly found themselves navigating the treacherous waters of adolescent romance. Harry's courage, which had served him so well against dragons, crumbled to dust when faced with asking Cho Chang to be his partner. The cruel irony of fate delivered its blow when he discovered she had already accepted Cedric Diggory's invitation, the same Cedric who remained unfailingly kind and handsome, making hatred impossible despite Harry's disappointment. The night of the Yule Ball arrived like a fairy tale sprung to life, the great hall draped in silver and ice, sparkling under the light of 1,000 floating candles. Then Hermione descended the marble staircase, and the world seemed to pause in reverence. Gone was the girl with wild hair and ink-stained fingers. In her place stood a vision of elegance that left jaws agape and hearts racing. Victor Crumb, the famous Quidditch star, gazed at her with the wonder of a man discovering magic for the first time, while Ron watched in growing horror as jealousy consumed him like a poison. The evening that should have been magical devolved into bitter arguments and wounded pride, friendships straining under the weight of unspoken feelings and adolescent confusion. In the depths of his frustration with the golden egg's ear-splitting shriek, Harry found an unlikely ally in moaning Myrtle, whose ghostly giggles echoed through the abandoned bathroom as she revealed the egg's secret. Submerged in the prefect's bathroom, surrounded by soap bubbles and warmth, the egg sang its haunting melody, a warning of the underwater trial that awaited him. The merpeople's song spoke of treasures lost beneath the Black Lake's surface, and Harry's blood ran cold as he realized he would have to brave the depths where sunlight never reached. When the morning of the second task arrived and panic threatened to overwhelm him, salvation came in the most unexpected form. Dobby, tears streaming down his face, pressed Gillyweed into Harry's trembling hands with fierce loyalty. The lake's icy waters closed over Harry's head like a living tomb, but the magical plant worked its miracle, transforming him into something that could survive in that alien world below. Through the murky depths he swam, past Grindylows and strange underwater forests, until he found them, Ron and Fleur's little sister Gabrielle, suspended in enchanted sleep among the merpeople's coral gardens. The moral weight of the task pressed upon him as heavily as the water itself. While other champions rescued only their own treasures, Harry refused to leave Gabrielle behind when Fleur failed to appear. Emerging from the depths with both hostages, gasping and half-frozen, he learned that his compassion had earned him points beyond mere speed, though the cost of his heroism left him shivering uncontrollably as Dobby wrapped him in warm blankets, the house elf's eyes shining with pride for the wizard who had first shown him kindness. The shadows of Grimmauld Place seemed to breathe with ancient secrets as Sirius Black pulled back the curtain on a past that had shaped the wizarding world's darkest hours. His voice carried the weight of hard-won wisdom as he revealed the tragic fall of Barty Crouch, a man whose iron dedication to justice had crumbled when faced with his own son's betrayal. The irony cut deep. Crouch, who had sent countless Death Eaters to Azkaban without trial, had watched his own flesh and blood receive the Dementor's kiss for torturing the Longbottoms into madness. Sirius's revelations about Igor Karkaroff painted an equally damning picture. The Durmstrang headmaster had purchased his freedom by betraying his fellow Death Eaters, a coward's bargain that left him forever looking over his shoulder. Meanwhile, Rita Skeeter's venomous quill continued its relentless assault on Harry's reputation, twisting every word and manufacturing scandals from thin air. Her articles dripped with malicious speculation about his mental state and romantic entanglements, each published lie feeling like a fresh wound. But it was Hermione who watched with growing fury, her brilliant mind already formulating a plan for revenge that would be as methodical as it would be devastating. The injustice of Skeeter's lies burned within her like a flame, and she began to notice details that others overlooked, small inconsistencies that would prove to be the journalist's undoing. The vision struck Harry without warning, plunging him into Voldemort's mind with terrifying clarity. Through the Dark Lord's eyes he witnessed cruelty and rage so pure it left him gasping and trembling, his scar blazing with agony that seemed to split his skull. The connection between them grew stronger with each passing day, a psychic wound that refused to heal. When Barty Crouch appeared in the Forbidden Forest, his mind shattered like broken glass, speaking in fragments about his son and dark deeds before vanishing into the night. Harry felt the web of conspiracy tightening around Hogwarts like a noose. Dumbledore's pensieve revealed horrors that would haunt Harry's dreams for years to come. In the swirling silver memories, he watched young Death Eaters receive their sentences, their faces twisted with defiance or terror. But it was the revelation about Neville's parents that struck him like a physical blow. Frank and Alice Longbottom, tortured beyond sanity's breaking point by Bellatrix Lestrange and her companions, their minds lost forever to the Cruciatus curse. The weight of this knowledge settled on Harry's shoulders like lead, explaining so much about Neville's quiet courage and his grandmother's fierce protectiveness. As the third task loomed, the maze rose from the Quidditch pitch like a living nightmare, its hedges towering 20 feet high and rustling with malevolent whispers. Harry and Cedric plunged into its depths together, their temporary alliance born of mutual respect and shared danger. The maze seemed determined to separate them, its paths shifting like a serpent's coils, but they fought side by side against its monstrous guardians, sphinxes with riddles and blast, ended scroots with explosive tempers. When they finally reached the centre together, the Triwizard Cup gleaming like a beacon of hope, neither could have imagined that their gesture of sportsmanship would be their last act of innocence before the darkness truly descended. The Triwizard Cup gleamed like a beacon in the maze's heart, its golden surface catching the last rays of twilight as Harry and Cedric emerged from different paths simultaneously. Both champions, battered and exhausted from the maze's treacherous trials, exchanged a weary glance of mutual respect. In a moment that would define both their fates, they reached for the cup together, a gesture of sportsmanship that masked the deadly trap awaiting them. The world dissolved in a whirlwind of colour and sensation as the Portkeys seized them, hurling them far from Hogwarts' protective grounds. They crashed into cold, damp earth in an ancient graveyard, where weathered headstones stood like silent sentinels in the gathering darkness. The space felt mean, and Harry's scar hurt. The pain was too much. Before either champion could comprehend their situation, a flash of green light split the air, and Cedric crumpled to the ground, his bright future extinguished in an instant by Wormtail's killing curse. Terror gripped Harry as he found himself bound to Tom Riddle's towering gravestone, helpless witness to the most horrific ritual of dark magic ever conceived. Wormtail's trembling hands performed each blasphemous step, bone of the father, unknowingly given, flesh of the servant, willingly sacrificed, and finally Harry's own blood, forcibly taken. The cauldron bubbled and steamed with unholy life as something monstrous began to take shape within its depths. When the smoke cleared, Lord Voldemort stood reborn pale as death, serpentine features twisted in triumph, red eyes gleaming with malevolent intelligence. The dark mark blazed across the sky like a scar upon the heavens, and Death Eaters materialized one by one, their black robes billowing as they knelt before their resurrected master. Voldemort's voice carried across the graveyard like poison on the wind as he recounted his fall and resurrection, his scarlet eyes never leaving Harry's face. He spoke of his grand design, how Harry's blood now flowed through his veins, breaking the ancient protection that had shielded the boy for so long. The night air crackled with dark magic and unfulfilled promises of revenge, while Harry realized with growing dread that this was no longer just about surviving a tournament. The war everyone had hoped was over had truly begun again. The graveyard felt scary as Voldemort, looking mean, let Harry go with his wand. The Dark Lord's red eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction as he commanded Wormtail to return Harry's wand, not out of mercy, but from a twisted desire to prove his superiority before his assembled Death Eaters. Harry's fingers trembled as they closed around the familiar holly wood, knowing that what came next would likely be his final act. The duel erupted in a blaze of deadly light as both wizards raised their wands simultaneously. Voldemort's killing curse met Harry's desperate disarming spell in mid-air, and something extraordinary happened. The two wands, connected by their shared phoenix feather cores, locked together in a brilliant golden thread of pure magic. The air itself seemed to sing as the priori incantatum effect took hold, forcing Voldemort's wand to regurgitate the echoes of its most recent spells. One by one, ghostly figures emerged from the connection, the old man from Little Hangleton, Bertha Jorkins, and then Harry's heart nearly shattered his parents. James and Lily Potter materialized as shimmering echoes of themselves, their faces filled with love and fierce protection as they surrounded their son. Their presence gave Harry strength he never knew he possessed, and in that moment of connection with the dead, they whispered urgent instructions. The golden thread trembled under the strain of opposing wills, and when Harry summoned every ounce of courage to break the connection, chaos erupted. The Echo People swarmed around Voldemort, buying precious seconds as Harry sprinted towards Cedric's still form. With tears streaming down his face and his heart hammering against his ribs, Harry grasped both Cedric's lifeless hand and the Triwizard Cup, feeling the familiar hook behind the navel sensation as the portkey activated. The last thing he saw was Voldemort's face, contorted with rage and disbelief, before the graveyard vanished in a swirl of colour. They materialized on the soft grass of Hogwarts, where the cheering crowd's jubilation died instantly at the sight of Cedric's motionless body and Harry's tear-stained, haunted expression. The Wizarding World's nightmare had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The castle felt like a stretched rubber band, because the truth jumped out like a wild animal. What had masqueraded as salvation revealed itself as the most insidious betrayal imaginable. The grizzled, battle-scarred Auror who had protected Harry throughout the year, Mad-Eye Moody, with his magical eye and paranoid wisdom, dissolved before everyone's eyes like a mirage in the desert. In his place stood a young man with the hollow, fanatical gaze of someone who had surrendered his soul to darkness, Barty Crouch Jr., supposedly dead, very much alive, and drunk on Polyjuice potion that had sustained his elaborate masquerade for months. The revelation struck like lightning through the assembled crowd. Every protective gesture, every lesson, every moment of seeming care had been calculated manipulation by a Death Eater who had infiltrated the very heart of Hogwarts. The conspiracy unravelled like a tapestry pulled apart thread by thread. Crouch Jr. had orchestrated Harry's entry into the tournament, guided him through each deadly task, and delivered him straight into Voldemort's waiting arms. The Ministry officials present recoiled as if physically struck, their faces cycling through disbelief, horror, and a desperate desire to reject what their eyes were showing them. But denial proved stronger than truth in the corridors of power. Minister Fudge, his face flushed purple with indignation and fear, refused to accept the impossible reality that Lord Voldemort had returned. His voice rose to near hysteria as he dismissed Harry's account, his hands shaking not with rage, but with the terror of a man whose comfortable world was crumbling around him. The political machinery of the Wizarding World ground into motion, choosing willful blindness over the courage required to face the darkness ahead. Before anyone could extract more information from the captured Death Eater, a Dementor conveniently present and suspiciously quick to act administered its fatal kiss, stealing away the soul that might have provided crucial intelligence. In the wake of this catastrophic loss, Dumbledore's eyes blazed with a fire that seemed to illuminate the very stones of Hogwarts. The old wizard moved with purpose that belied his years, sending urgent messages through his network of allies like a general marshalling troops for an inevitable war. Trusted members of the Order of the Phoenix received their assignments and melted away into the night, disappearing to destinations unknown but vital. The resistance that had once defeated Voldemort was stirring to life again, though this time they would have to operate in the shadows, opposed not just by Death Eaters, but by their own government's stubborn refusal to see. As the castle settled into an uneasy quiet, Harry found himself walking through corridors that felt haunted by more than ghosts. Hogwarts mourned its lost son. Cedric Diggory's absence echoed in every corner where laughter should have been. Students whispered in hushed tones, their eyes following Harry with a mixture of awe, fear, and uncertainty. The weight of being the only witness to the Dark Lord's return pressed down on his shoulders like a physical burden. His final goodbyes to Ron and Hermione carried the weight of unspoken fears. Would they all survive whatever was coming? As the Hogwarts Express carried him back toward Privet Drive and the Dursleys' suffocating normalcy, Harry stared out the window at a world that refused to believe it was already at war, knowing that the real battle was only just beginning.